But in the 1960s, Mississippi was not a magical place. No, it was a cauldron of terror. It was filled with bombings and burnings and beatings and bruisings. Phil Oak spent 1 week in Mississippi, and he went back to New York and he wrote this song that said, if you drag her muddy rivers, nameless bodies you will find. The fat trees of the forest hold 1,000 crimes. The white segregationists wanted to keep Jim Crow propped up as high as they could and make Mississippi look like it did before the Civil War. And in this cauldron of terror lived Fannie Lou Hamer. My name is Fannie Lou Hamer, and I grew up barefoot and hungry, wishing so bad I could be white. Oh, God. And in 1962, I was 44 years old, and I went to my first mass meeting with SNCC, Student for Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And there I learned for the very first time that the Negro had the right to vote. Ooh, I raised my hand so high. Ooh, I want to vote. And a few days later, I was on the bus, headed for Sunflower County Registrar's Office. And I got in there, and SNCC helped pay for the poll tax. I had to take a literacy test. And then there was this oral exam. They asked me about a de facto law. Well, you don't know nothing about no de facto law. So the registration didn't take that time. And on our way back from the county registrar's office, the state highway patrolman pulled our bus over. He said the bus was the wrong color. And he gave us a ticket. So amongst all of us on that bus, we helped the driver pay for it. But when I got back to the Marlowe plantation, where my husband was a sharecropper, and I was the timekeeper, my children and my husband come on out, and they said, Fannie Lou, the boss man, he been here and he's raising cane because you went to register to vote. And by the time he finished speaking, Mr. Marlowe himself come. Jenny, did Pop tell you what I said to you? Yes, sir. Did he tell you that you got to go back there? You got to go back there and unregister yourself. And if you don't, you're going to have to move off this plantation. No. I think you're going to have to move off this plantation anyway. Mr. Marlowe, sir, I didn't go there to register you. I went there to register me. I had to move off that plantation that night. And I moved in with the Tuckers. And 2 weeks later, 16 bullets went through my bedroom wall. And 2 other houses were shot in that night, and 2 girls were hit. No, Mississippi, it was a hardcore white supremacist state. And what can I do to help make that change? It didn't stop me, those bullets through that wall. I went and became a field worker with SNCC. Oh, and I thought I had a power that I didn't know that I had. Whenever I spoke, ooh, Mississippi got up and spoke with me. One of the things that I said the most was, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. But when I sang, you could hear my voice all over Sunflower County. Why don't you sing it with me? Put up your little finger here. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. In the jailhouse, I'm gonna let it shine. The jailhouse, 1963. I was coming from a voter registration in Indianola, Mississippi. And we were going through Montgomery County when the state highway patrolman arrested about 6, 7 of us and took us to the county jail. And from the booking room, they took me to a cell. And I could hear the lickings and the screaming, and I could hear the lickings and the horrible screaming. Then it was my turn. 2 state highway patrolmen took me to another cell where there were 2 Negro prisoners. And the state highway patrolmen, they cursed and they yelled at that Negro prisoner, and they gave him their Billy Jack. And he told the first Negro prisoner to beat me. And he beat me until he was exhausted. And then the state highway patrolman ordered the first Negro prisoner to hand the Billy Jack to the second Negro prisoner. And he began to beat me. And I began to work my feet. And the state highway patrolman told the first Negro prisoner to sit on my feet, so I couldn't work my feet. And then I began to scream, and another man, white man who was sitting there, he got up, and he hit me in my face and told me to hush. My dress started to work its way up, and I started to pull my dress down. And the state highway patrolman told me to leave it be. I was in prison when Medgar Evers was gunned down in his driveway. He was an NAACP field worker. I survived that beating, but ooh, my kidneys still give me trouble to this day. What change is going to come to Mississippi? How are we going to get our right to vote like the rest of America? Well, Bob Moses had this plan. And in 1963, he started going through all the colleges, some of the high schools, and he started talking to people about what it was like to live in Mississippi. And over 700 students, white students, black students from Howard University, Cornell, Yale, Stanford, all over the United States, signed up to come to Mississippi for Freedom Summer 1964. Some of the men who came and some of the women who came, they came to work, to start freedom schools, to teach the black children in Mississippi how to think, how to ask questions, how to go against the status quo. And they were registering Negroes to vote. Oh, but we had students like Mario Savio from New York, just a high school student. He come to Mississippi and work in Macomb. And then after Macomb, he went on to UC Berkeley and started that free speech movement. And we had others. And we had different movie stars like Belafonte and Sidney Poitier. They came about $60,000 to help fund our project. Shirley McCabe came. She was often in my kitchen stirring the beans. And Martin Luther King, he came through. Oh, so many people come to help and to encourage us to make a change. But the hardest part of that summer started at the very first day. June 21st, 3 of our workers went down to Mississippi to investigate a burning of a church that was going to hold a freedom school. And when they left the Ohio Training Center, where we trained all these hundreds of students, they were never seen again alive. Michael Schwerner, white, Jewish, Cornell graduate. He and his wife, Rita, moved to Meridian, Mississippi, January 1964, and they became the first civil rights white workers in that area, and they lived in the black sections of town. But by May, the Ku Klux Klan decided that Mickey Schwerner, who they called Goatee, needed to be exterminated. James Earl Chaney, Negro, Christian, grew up in Mississippi, and when he met Mickey Schwerner, he wanted to work with him. He became a civil rights worker, and the two were inseparable. Andrew Goodman, white, Jewish, from Queens College. He came to the Ohio Training Center, and he was slated to go to Vicksburg, Mississippi. But instead, Mickey Schwerner recruited him to come to Meridian and start the Freedom School there. 3 men disappeared, and it took the entire summer for their bodies to be found. Now, June 21st, they disappeared. June 23rd, the FBI got involved to find not so much James Chaney, but to find the 2 white men. Hundreds of them came to Philadelphia, Mississippi, to find them. They brought helicopters to look from the air. There was 200 sailors who came going through all the swamps and the rivers of Mississippi in that area. Newspaper reporters came from France and Germany and England and all over the United States. All the hotels in Philadelphia were full of people. That place was invaded. It took the FBI over $800,000 to find what happened to those 3. Highway patrolman from Meridian, he would rather be barbecuing than be involved in murder. He was the first one who began to talk. An auto sales repairman, he began to talk. A United Methodist minister who wanted to join the Ku Klux Klan because it was a white segregationist Christian organization. But he didn't want murder on his conscience. His testimony alone filled 40 pages. So on August 4th, they started the digging. The bodies were going to be found at a dam that had not been filled with water. 11 o'clock, the smell of decay began to fill the air. 3 o'clock, the body of Michael Schwerner found. 5:07, the body of Andrew Goodman found. 5:14, the body of James Earl Chaney found. Now the parents of Schwerner and Goodman didn't trust any Mississippi coroner to tell the truth about what happened to their boys. They sent their own doctor. Michael Schwerner shot point blank under the arm, the bullet lodged in his left lung. Andrew Goodman shot in the chest, but according to the coroner, he was still alive when he was buried. James Earl Chaney, beat to a pulp, unrecognizable, shot 3 times. In December, the men, 21 men were acquitted. The U.S. Justice Department, the U.S. Supreme Court got involved. 3 years later, 7 men received 3 to 10 years in prison. 7 men were acquitted. 4 was a hung juror. That was the first time since Reconstruction that a white man had been convicted of a crime to a Negro in the state of Mississippi. 41 years later, Killen, who was the mastermind behind the entire event, was finally brought to justice. He received 60 years in prison for manslaughter. But change was coming to Mississippi. Change was coming. A few weeks after they had found those bodies, we sent 63 of us to the National Democratic Convention in New Jersey, Atlantic, New Jersey. Oh, we were barbers and cooks and undertakers. Oh, most of us illiterate, but we had a wisdom that no classroom could teach us. Ooh, Lyndon B. Johnson didn't know what to do with these 63 Negroes who come up there. We wanted to be seated with the lily white folk from Mississippi. But oh, the people from Texas, all the way to Florida, all the way up to Maryland, they promised to walk out of that convention and we were seated. And they finally said 2 could be seated, but we want all 63 of us. We didn't win that battle. But what happened is I got on national TV. Yes, Fannie Lou Hamer got on national TV. And I told about what happened at the Marlowe plantation. I told them what happened in prison when I was in jail. And I concluded it. All we want to be is decent, first-class Americans. And if the Freedom Democratic Party is not seated now, I question America. Is this really America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off of the hook because we receive death threats daily? Is this really America? Ooh, I said that on TV. Lyndon B. Johnson tried to cut it all out, but later on I was aired on 3 more channels. That was a day, that was a day, that was a day. Over 400 telegrams came into the White House trying to figure out what they could do with us. Whew. But change was coming in Mississippi. It was really coming. And Macomb, where Mario Savio was, they raised up $5,000. The white folk did, the good white folk, to find out who was the cause of more than a dozen bombings that summer in their city. And in the Holiday Inn, they opened up their doors to the first Negro guests. And a couple of the restaurants, not only in Macomb, but in Hattiesburg and other places, opened up their doors to Negroes and thanked them for their business and invited them to come back. Ooh, that had never been done before in Mississippi, I can tell you that. No, change was coming. Change was coming. Now, what I want you all to do is spell that name of that state with me. N-I-S-S-I-S-S-I-P-P-I.